Back
Hey, Clint.
again, Ziti TV. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
It's a rainy day here in Western New York,
Oh, yeah?
but maybe maybe I'll crank this window open just a little bit, get a nice
Get some
breeze
fresh
coming
air?
in. Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
Um, nope. Well, we'll see. We'll see if it rains. I like the smell of the rain. So, um, we're back for another ZD TV. Another one which has been stream of conscious ZD TV, like we like
That's
to
what we
do.
do here.
That is what we do. So no big presentation. There will be some in the future where ZDTVs are a bit more planned out.
Kind of a
Um,
special episode with higher effort,
I don't know if I'd say special episode, but maybe, yeah. We used
or
to do
maybe
these
a different
things.
show on the same channel.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be the other. It'll be a special feature. Sure, I like it. Um, I like the we used to do these things here at Foundry, which is of course the company that sponsors the Opencd project that we
Yep.
called Kitchens or ZT Kitchens, because our favorite thing to do here is to make all the jokes about cooking pasta that we can. Right, that's really what we do here. It's not about zero trust. It's not about keeping the world secure by using SDKs in your applications. No. That's all ancillary to the pasta jokes,
And
right?
that's one specific type of pasta, not
Very,
Pastafarianism in general.
very, that's right. Very specific type of pasta. I've had actually some numerous arguments about what is a ZT and what goes into one. Does it look like, is it rigatonis that also look like them? I think it's rigatonis that look like them too.
Or penne.
No, penne doesn't look anything like them. Like
Well, it depends on what
rigatoni
you're
at
laying.
least is a rigatoni's at least a tube.
Yeah,
You know,
manicotti is made with rigatoni, right?
Manicotti is crimped, right? So
With
I don't.
ricotta and tomato sauce.
Yeah, but it's crimped. It's not a tube. The key is it's a tube, right? It's got to be a
Okay.
tube. So
You're
ZD's a
referring to the
tube.
tube-like nature of ZD.
Well, the tube. I mean, it fits in so many levels, right? So maybe what I should do when I start. So like I've made. All right, we're gonna take
I
a
used to
little
have a
fun.
box of ZDs sitting right here so I could hold it up at any time.
We're that's I believe it. Um,
If
I
you try searching for a picture of ZD, it's not too hard. It's pretty hard to find something that looks really appealing, like for sharing.
so not long ago, 2 days ago, there was a video. Some other user on YouTube had asked for a quick start type of guide where we show accessing a private resource in a cloud kind of way. And so I ended up creating this diagram here based on what that user had asked for. So, and then Galil, our CEO, chimed in and said, "Hey, if you wanted to, you could actually keep your edge router in a private data center, and then keep another edge router in your other private data center, and then have absolutely no open firewall rules." Right? In fact, let me make this image bigger so it looks a bit better. So what he was saying,
Yeah.
I had started. In fact, let me just go back.
Oh, okay.
We'll
So
go
the
up to the
rendezvous is
first.
provided by a hosted router, right? And then you have two private routers.
Right. So here's the video. You can go out and find totally private Postgres if you
Totally
want, but
private Postgres.
but you can see this was what the user was asking for: one
Okay.
virtual machine and another virtual machine in the same. They were using Google, but same VPC, and private access into your Postgres server using OpenZD. And I just wanted to highlight the fact that you do need this one firewall hole open, right? So Galil chimed in and said, "Hey, if you really wanted to, you don't even need that firewall hole open in your data center. If you put an edge router in here that doesn't have a link listener, so that it dials out and connects to this other one, the rendezvous one in the cloud, which does have
Okay.
that firewall hole open." I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea."
All right.
Anyway, a lot of backstory. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I
You got a
just want to make
question?
sure I understand. Boil it down into two words. There are two types of listeners we're talking about here. There's the link listener, which is a fabric listener, and that's the one in the middle that's hosted. And it has link listener to which the edge routers are communicating, and they're providing a quote edge listener to the identity, to the SDK, to the endpoint on both sides. The wings are using edge to get onto the edge router. The edge routers are using links or fabric links to get onto the internet.
I wouldn't say to get onto the internet, right? I would say to get onto the overlay or to link or to form the mesh, right?
They're speaking
Like,
different protocols, but there's one type of protocol listener in the middle,
are they
and the
speaking different
others.
protocols? I mean, there's still TLS between them. Just the
Well,
fact
first
that
it's
the
TLS,
edge,
but then the app that's inside of that is Fabric on the link listener side and Edge on the Edge listener side.
yeah, and I would imagine that the edge and the fabric are not quite the same, but I would imagine there is
Sure.
some overlap there. I actually don't
I
know if there's
realize that I'm
overlap.
belaboring the point. Please continue.
Yes. Oh, we do have a clarifying comment, however, from
Ah,
somebody who seems to know better. Manicotti, Penne, Ziti, and Rigatoni is all round. Some are on a bias cut, some have ridges,
yay!
but
I got it.
all
It's Manicotti.
all are tubes. So I stand corrected. Thank you, Jeff. Very important and also relevant because what I was trying to get to is I had just made this particular diagram. And in this particular diagram, I had made a new little piece of artwork. Now, we have a great graphic designer, Dave Finger, here. He probably looks at my little artwork and scoffs at it, but it's my best effort, right? I think it looks kind of pretty. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you don't, I want to know.
It's
But
not bad. It
but
definitely has a
it
tube.
looks like, yeah, we got that little tube action going on here.
Oh my
And
goodness,
now
it's tubes all the way
you
down.
see where I'm going. You see where I'm going. Exactly. Maybe that's going to become ZD instead of this weird little, the ZD branding colors. It could be an actual
Yeah.
piece of pasta there that represents that tunneling app. Anyway,
And just to make it extra recursive, we need we need to start using turtles instead of arrows. A little turtle named
so
Bertrand.
I do some videos where I have animated packets being sent. I got to tell you, I don't like
Turtles.
I don't like the whole idea that my packets are slow as turtles. Thank you. If we're gonna have some reference, it can't be turtles. It should be
But
like light
it's
speed.
but ZD's all about winning the race, not getting there as quickly as possible.
No, no. ZD is definitely about getting there as quickly as possible. That is what the fabric wants to do. It wants to get you there as fast as possible.
Well, fast enough, but the priority
Fast
is
as
still to
possible.
actually get there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And securely get there. So if we wanted to put like a little helmet or some sort of interesting armor on a hare, I'm all for it.
Okay,
But
okay.
I don't
Give
like
the
the
hare what he
turtle.
needs to
I
get
don't like the
there.
turtle. I get the turtles all the way down reference. I get it, but I don't want my packets being slow as turtles. I want them being
Uh,
fast, fast, fast.
I give
All
up.
right.
I give up.
Yeah. You'll never win. You'll never win. All right. So yeah, that's a little prelude into today's ZD TV. Oh, speaking of today's ZD TV, here's what we got going on. Let me let's see, what view? Let's go to this view.
2 releases again.
Oh, we
Are we
can't
at
do
a
that.
2 release
Boom,
per
we're gonna
week
do it this way.
average?
Well, if anybody wants to go out and do the math on this, then by all means, feel free. The OpenZD project absolutely has no compunction about creating releases. Very fast, very furious. You can get the latest and use it if you want. We actually almost always recommend you use the
Yeah.
latest because the latest is going to have the latest bug fixes. But
Right.
a part of OpenZD we don't talk about too much is the parent company, NetFoundry. NetFoundry, of course, runs an OpenZD network, which is why I'm bringing it in as a tie-in. And as such, they are a bit more, let's say, safe about when you take an update. You don't just take the latest and jam it out there. You take it, you test it, you make sure it works, that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Anyway, on today's OpenZD TV, ZD TV, I'm always pleased with myself when I remember to update the date in the slide here. So May 27. I've made that mistake numerous times. I don't know if anybody's caught it.
We're on track so far.
But we're gonna go over the release notes, and then we'll do some DNS discussion, and then we'll also talk about some stuff that's coming down the line here around metrics collection and Prometheus, and just Prometheus in general. I am certain that this will fill 50 minutes. So sit back, relax. We're going to bring special guest star on today. Guess who's here with us today, Ken? Do you know?
Is it Ziggy?
No, you know. You can see. Come on. It's
Is it Todd
Todd.
Burchell, Ziggy
It's
costume?
Todd. It is Todd. It is Todd, not Todd in a Ziggy costume, although I do see the
Still time.
resemblance. I do see the resemblance. Um,
Do you
anyway,
relate to
Todd,
being tube-like, Todd?
I definitely relate to being tube-like. That's for sure. So we got Todd here today, and we're bringing Todd in because he is working on the metrics collection and Prometheus type of stuff lately. So why don't we just
Very cool.
get Todd, before we start, anything you want to say? You've been quiet over there. Does your
I'm
mic
just,
work?
I hope so.
It
I
does.
was on mute though. I'm back.
All right.
I'm just happy to be here.
Oh, happy to be here. Well, excellent. We're happy to have you here on Ziti TV. All right, so let's go ahead and look at release notes. Everybody's favorite first thing that we do. All right, maybe let me end big in this. So I think
Did you mean to leave me in and pull Ken in, or did you?
Ken is empowered to do as
Oh,
Ken
I see.
does. You, however, are merely a guest. Ken can do and show up at a moment's notice. So he's there. I can do this. I can turn him off, and then he can turn himself back on. Watch this. Oh, now he's turned his video off. Now there. He is. I put him back again, and now his mic doesn't work. That's funny. All right. Well, anyway, we are going to go over 25.9 first. Let's go and take a look. Where did that changelog go? Here it is. I always have to do it on my screen to my left. So if I'm not looking at you, I'm looking down here because this is where I got my screen share. All right. So what's new? The edge is what's new. There's nothing new in the Golang. I'm loving the changes to the changelog already. This is so nice. I can see the major pieces of what go into an Opencd release. They are, generally speaking, around the overlay network and not so much around the clients which connect to the overlay network, because the tunneling applications that we have that allow you to onboard onto an Opencd overlay network are all operating system specific. So you'll find them for Windows and Mac and Linux and iOS and Android. And then there are whole bunches of SDKs that you can use as well. So these changelog, when I read these changelogs, it's almost always and exclusively for the overlay network manipulation. And as you can see, we have decided that there are four main pieces of the overlay network. You have edge componentry, which covers edge routers and edge controllers. We have the fabric componentry, which is what Ken and I were kind of talking about earlier, the things that actually get traffic from point A to point B, presuming that you have a mesh network, meaning more than one edge router and links formed between those edge routers. The ZD CLI is used to interact with ZD. I do think it might be worthwhile to put Zach changes in here, but Zach is a whole other project and separate from the overlay network, the /ZD project. So maybe not. And then the SDK Golang, which is a fundamental underpinning of of all three, realistically. If I were to rank these in order, it would go SDK Golang, which the Fabric uses, and then the Fabric is used by the Edge, and then the ZD CLI uses one more or all of them. Anyway, so this is really nice because we can see that in 25.9, the only thing that has changed is an Edge-related feature. Create identity enrollments and allow identity re-enrollment. Shame on me. I did not add a reminder to ask people like Andrew Martinez for any crib notes. I need to do that because I'm still unimpressed with OpenZD's release notes from a bullet point perspective. Just because I first come in here, I see this title, looks good, but then I see an entire paragraph of words. And my initial reaction is, wow, that's a lot of words. So let's take a look and see if those words all make sense. All right, I'm sure they make sense. Let me rephrase that. Let's see if they are bite-sized as opposed to not bite-sized. Ability to create identity enrollments allows new enrollment JWTs to be generated throughout any identity's lifetime. Well, Ziti supports scenarios where re-enrolling an identity is more convenient than recreating it. That's a bullet point right there. So allowing Ziti to support re-enrolling an identity as opposed to recreating it, a huge problem during development. Not so much a huge problem in practicality, but huge problem in development. And when you're testing things out and you're doing things on an Opencd network, a lot of times you want to clean it up. And when you clean it up, you the things you'll clean up is the identity, because hey, I want to just make it all tidy again. I want to rerun my create commands, and if you do that, and if you have a tunneler that is using that identity, well, it's very easy to make the mistake of deleting your identity, your tunneler not working, and not knowing why, because the tunneler will still report that identity. The tunneler does not know that the identity has been removed. There is no event that informs the tunneler to eject that identity from the tunneler. Could be a nice feature request, though. I don't know if we have that feature request. I know we have talked a little bit about it. There have been some customers who get into this situation and have wanted to be able to do this. Also, if you move your device, sometimes there have been talks lately about how can you move your device from your identity from one device to another. Like you get a new phone, right? Like every time we get a new phone, you've got to ask the Opencd administrator to give you a new identity, which is totally on purpose. But maybe there's a way to allow identities to self-serve in that kind of a situation. So that's a little bit about creating identities and why re-enrollment is interesting.
That's exactly where my mind was
well,
going.
Not only
this.
that, but look at the next paragraph. The most common scenario is device transitions, which is what I just covered. So that's pretty cool.
But in this
also
release,
could have been a bullet.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So in this release, I'm not clear on whether it is self-serve. Can I do this can I theoretically do this from the SDK as long as I implement this endpoint, or do I need the same permissions to issue a new enrollment as I did to issue the identity in the first place?
It's a great question. It does not seem to be spelled out so clearly. I do not know. So good question. One of our goals is to do a better job of recapping our Ziti TVs. So perhaps, Ken, getting that answer and recapping it might be a good thing to do. Might be a good
I'll
thing.
put it in the comments so I remember.
I was about to say, let's see if either of us remembers. All right, new endpoints. This is all API changes that are largely details, right? Like I'm not a detail guy. I like the 10,000 foot view. Creating identity enrollments. Identity enrollments can only allow instead of enrollment. For example, create multiple entities. Deleting existing enrollments to resolve this. Property utilized. Well, that's too many words. I can't. It didn't make a lot of sense. I'm going to skip it because it's taking too long. So let's keep going. 25.10. Okay, look at this. Oh, look at this. See, we know there's no edge and fabric changes. I don't know if this is Paul or Andrew, but loving it. All right. ZDCLI support enrollments authenticators. So it looks like we built upon that stuff from down below. Proxy download. I don't know why we're downloading Proxy from Ziti, but great. Fabric cleanup. I think that means we've removed it. I also don't know what that means. So let's keep going. We'll see if we can figure it out. CLI support for enrollments, authenticators, and re-enrollment. Augmented support the following commands. List enrollments. Create a new one-time token. Well, I imagine none of these things are for an endpoint. So we still don't know the answer to your question, Ken. ZD install proxy has been updated. ZD install is I'm not sure if that command will survive for much longer, but it was an attempt to make it easy to get ZD. So maybe it will, maybe it won't. One user discovered it on Discourse and noted that it was broken. So it looks like somebody probably fixed that. CD fabric cleanup. It's been removed, deprecated. All right, so it won't be published. So that's what that means. All right, well, that's our changelog reading for the day. That's good. So now we can get into some meat and potato types of topics, which is
I love
DNS.
farmer food.
You like farm to table, right? Okay, so DNS, we had a internal Mattermost chat. And on that Mattermost chat, a prospect was asking about Opencd and said, "Hey, how does DNS work?" And it's a very, very broad question. And so I said, "Hey, this is a good thing for me to talk about on Opencd because it is a pretty big topic, and there is no one answer for it. So let's have a little talk on Ziti TV about DNS. I'm trying to find the link, which was provided to me, and apparently my Mattermost crashed too. Well, that's pretty cool. I know it was in an internal chat. Anyway, so the DNS servers, how does it work? I'm going to start by talking about the Windows stuff because Windows is what I know best. It's what I had a relatively big hand in making the first incarnation of, not so much the second, but at least the first. And so I can take people on a tour of the Windows stuff a little bit. Ken is well versed with the Linux based stuff, much more than I am, has been involved in a little bit around updating it. I don't know, Todd, how much DNS work you've had to do so far, but maybe you'll have some insights into there too. I know you mostly work on the fabric, which is the other side of Opencd. It's not so much the edge side. It's not so much the outside. It's the inside, as everybody loves to say, the GUI center. I hate but
You don't like it?
I know I can't stand the GUI center. No,
I think it's funny. Okay, well,
I'm not picking
I
on you. It's just it's not
yeah.
a Ken pick. This is everybody is like the crunchy outside and the GUI center. It's a tried and
I
true
was just
thing.
tired. Okay, I got
No,
you.
it's
Dead
it's
horse.
not you. No, not you.
Yeah.
All right, so
Well,
opens.
before you dive into the
Oh
operating
yeah.
specific thing, I'd really
Yeah.
like to clarify exactly what the question is and what are we trying to get to as far as an answer. I think we can give a general treatment to the major operating systems just fine, but it sounds like they're asking how does DNS work with respect to OpenZD, specifically tunneling, because DNS is not a factor unless you're using a tunneler.
It's funny that you say it that way because while I mostly agree with you, I also do not agree with you in some ways. Because I mean, technically, I would totally agree, 100% agree. But on the outside, as a consumer, it's probably not so obvious that DNS is actually not involved. That, boy, oh boy, that's a whole other topic. I don't know if we're going to even get to Todd stuff if we go down that hole. So let's.
Okay. Well, the
But
short version of what is DNS with respect to tunneling in OpenZD is that a tunneler, which is an SDK app, an Edge SDK app, that's built for your operating system, a specific operating system like Android or Mac OS, its job is to tunnel two types of things. One would be, its job is to scoop up IP traffic that matches a service that you already have permission to talk to. But it does that by providing two things on the operating system in an operating system specific way. And that is name services and IP routes. And of course, names resolve to IPs. So those IPs have routes on that particular operating system. And tunneler just has a different way of accomplishing those two things. Name services, a resolver config for that operating system, and IP routes for each service.
okay, I feel like we're going real heavy down the DNS rabbit hole right now. I want to bring this back a level because you understand DNS in a way that I would imagine most people who are going to watch ZDTV aren't going to understand. So I do like the recap idea though. No, that's not. It's good. It's just you are operating at the ground floor. Everybody else is like, how do I get to Ken's level? He's or maybe you're up in the sky. I don't know. So
Just need to do a better job of explaining it.
what is it that we are trying to display? That was your first question, which is a good question because you're right. Tunneling applications for Opencd provide this feature called well, that's that is basically it is not basically it is DNS. So every tunneling application provides within it some way of turning a host name or a fully qualified domain name technically into that IP address that Ken was talking about because that's really what computers want to work on, right? They don't care about DNS so much. They care about IP addresses and they want to send your traffic to the IP address. And DNS is a nice and easy way for humans to translate words that we can remember into an IP address that the computer can work with, right? That
Absolutely, yeah. It's a transparent proxy for layer 3,
transparent proxy.
meaning that
More words
so,
that no.
okay, I have a much better way of saying this.
Yeah, yeah.
I apologize. I have a much better way. So what I mean is that your non-ZD apps can communicate normally. They do not need to be aware of anything. They don't need to know about ZD. They don't need to know about
Ah,
proxies.
so
It's
that's what
transparent to
transparent
them.
proxy means. Gotcha.
Yes, yes, as
Gotcha.
opposed to opaque or forward proxy, which means that the application needs to be configured in a special way to use that
Specifically.
proxy.
Yeah.
Yes,
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for clarifying that. That makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, these tunnelers are providing transparent proxy support to the regular applications on your computer. Some of those regular applications are your browser, right? Like that's one application. Uh,
absolutely.
a nerdier type of application would be Netcat. Netcat would be a application on your computer that you could use. So I just happen to have a tunneler running, and I happen to have a dev client that has a bunch of services already in it, most of which are provisioned over port 80, which is generally speaking HTTP, and that's what they are here too. So I can go to a website. In fact, I'm going to bring this over here, make it enlarged. I was doing some Prometheus work not too long ago, so I should be able to access cube.a.prometheus.service. I recognize this is almost illegible, if not totally illegible. So I'll just go in here, I'll grab the address, I'll
I'm going
copy
to
it,
start sharing your screen.
and I will paste it here. Oh, I wasn't sharing my screen. Thank you, Ken.
I turned it on,
Jeez.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I forgot to do that. I thought I was doing it. So you can see I went to http://cubea.prometheus.service. And when I did that, Prometheus came up. Yay, that's exciting. If I click on the graph, we're going to see nothing in here because there's nothing to graph, but I could go to targets. Let me go to targets. Targets. And see, this is an app that's being transparently proxied, those cool words that Ken just taught me into the tunneler. The tunneler then turned that cube.a.prometheus.service into an IP address. So that's the job of DNS itself. And then we scooped up those packets, like Ken was saying, and shoveled them over ZD, and ZD offloaded them. So how does that DNS work? In Windows, it works through something that's called, I'm going to go PowerShell. It's called the NRPT, the Network Routing Policy Table, I think. You can Google NRPT and
I love
correct me.
this new Windows Terminal app, by the way.
It is largely an improvement over the old Command Shell or PowerShell. Like they're both uglier than sin. But you can also install. I also have a PowerShell in here. The developer PowerShell. This one here. If you
Okay.
open that, nope, that's the wrong one. Where's the other PowerShell? This one?
I
Nope,
love them both,
also
and
wrong.
I use
This
this
one.
exclusively now to access the terminal in Windows, but VI is still hell using it with like through the bash prompt there. It doesn't lots of things I don't expect. Anyway,
That's
very much
funny.
the
I don't
same.
have those experiences, but neat. I can open this PowerShell is the one I was looking for. This is the one where there's 7.2.4. Uh, and there's a NRPT. So if we do DNS client, right? Is it get DNS client? nrpt rule. So if you run this PowerShell commandlet, it'll show you all of the things that Opencd has done on your behalf. And one of those things, get out of here, one of those things is, if I go into grep and I look for Mattermost, one of those things that is provided for me is mattermost.zd.com, as well as mattermost.tools.netfoundry.io. Important, .netfoundry.io, a legitimate domain. If I were to curl to this place, I would get a response at some point. I promise. I don't know why that's taken so long. That is unexpected. Is my computer still working? Hello. All right, let's go back to the command prompt and do that curl.
I can still see and hear you.
I am. Oh, and I know why. HTTPS. There we go. Can't get there over port 80. What? See, I love it when I demonstrate features of Opencd and don't even know it. So I was going to just mattermost.com or whatever, which is inferring port 80, and we don't have port 80 involved. We have port 443 involved, so you have to be on port 443. Anyway, that has done a DNS request into my local DNS server, but it does that using the NRPT. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into this big long list, and instead of going to grep, I'm going to go into less just so I can find this thing, and I'm going to go into less -r because that's apparently got some. Come on, you can do it. Come on, -r. There we go. And what it will do is it says, hey, if there is a DNS request that's being made on this computer and it matches this namespace, and you can see this is a specific name, mattermost.tools.netfoundry.io, it will say you need to use this DNS server. And so the Windows operating system, and this is also true for Mac and iOS, it's not an NRPT in Mac and iOS, it's different, but it's the same idea. I don't remember what the equivalent is in Mac, but what this will
The general
do,
term is search domain.
search domain, cool. See, Ken knows all this good stuff. And then these IPs are provided by the tunneler. You can notice that it's a 100.64 that is in the quote unquote carrier grade NAT IP range, which is a range that is not generally expected to route off of your computer. I believe it's for local. Might even be for other networks, but it's a private. It's a reserved range. You can go look up carrier grade NAT as well. Anyway, my computer has run a DNS request for mattermost.tools.netfoundry.io. And it said, hey, if you're going to do that, then you send this request to 100.64.0.3, and that will resolve an IP address. So if we come back here and we resolve a DNS name for mattermost.tools.netfoundry.io, it should return us an answer, 100.64.0.72. So if I were to do a curl -k for HTTPS to this, -k, by the way, ignores the certificate. I should get the same response as I got from Mattermost, and I did, which is exciting. So that is in a nutshell how DNS will work for Windows, Mac, and iOS. We have these search domains that are able to be injected ahead of the actual DNS request that's going out the door. And we're able to redirect the DNS request and to tell the system where to send that specific DNS request. Now, if you're using Windows and you are familiar with NS lookup, mattermost.tools.netfoundry.io, you are going to be disappointed because the tooling needs to know and understand the NRPT. Most applications that you run are not going to be written specifically for DNS in mind. NS lookup is one of those tools that is special because it is written for DNS, so it doesn't do some fancy things that you might expect, also due to its age. You might have noticed that resolve DNS did actually resolve, and NS lookup does not. However, you can supply the server which you want to use, and if you supply the server, then NS lookup can succeed. So if you're testing an Opencd network and you want to make sure your intercepts of DNS are working properly, you can use NSLOOKUP, but you must supply the server that you want to run that request against. You don't need to do that on PowerShell, or when you run certain apps. Anyway, that is basically DNS in a kind of nutshell for Windows, Mac, and iOS. Did I leave anything out there? Todd, did you know all this?
I'm learning. I did not know all this.
Isn't that
I
exciting?
knew it at a high level, but some of the details are nice to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so to recap, a vanilla app that's not a Ziti app and is not configured in any special way, it needs to communicate with something, and the system administrator wants to make it wants to publish a Ziti service basically to that app. So instead of going somewhere else, like over to the server and configuring DNS and global name hosted zones and stuff like that, we're just going to install Opencd on the same device where the app is running. And then when that app naively tries to access some domain name that doesn't even exist in the rest of the world, like myapp.zd, where .zd isn't even a real top-level domain in the global domain name system. It goes and it tries to look up that name, and the operating system says, here you go, here's an IP address. And again, the app naively tries to connect to that IP address. And then the tunneler scoops it up because it's like, hey, that's for me. That's one of my services that I have to offer that I'm publishing here on this device. So you get private authenticated DNS for non-Ziti apps and private authenticated IP routes that go to exactly one place.
Yes, great summary. Thank you. And during that summary, I also used Netcat to attach as just another example of an app, a random application that I knew would already work and be out there. You did mention routes. So, oh boy, that's a lot. Let's scroll back and find
Are those all
what
your
I was.
services for the Ziti network? Is that what's
These
happening?
are, yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to print the route table out, is because Ken mentioned the word route. So I wanted to go in and show you when you have a OpenZD tunneler running, you will get these routes, which you can look at by typing in Windows anyway, by typing route space print. You can even give it a little filter like 100 dot star, and it would find the ones that are appropriate. But these are all my little services that I have out here. You can see each of my IP addresses are redirected to a different IP. Well, I guess I don't know if redirected is the right word, but told to send this IP to this interface. And that's where we scoop them all up, like Ken was talking about before. We do have the capability of supporting, I don't think I have any cited ranges in here. I was just looking to see if I had anything that was
Oh, yeah.
that was a
If
range, but I
your
don't.
service is v2 config, right? Then it
Mhm.
can be a range.
Yeah, I don't think it's the V2 that matters. Intercept V1, I think, is also able. In
Okay.
fact, I don't think there's no, it's host V1 and host V2. There is only an intercept V1.
Okay.
There's only one kind. And in that intercept V1, you can specify a CIDR range as opposed to a fully qualified domain name. And real quick, Ken, can you give any treatment to the Linux world here? Like, does it work the same in Linux? Do you know how that
Basically,
actually?
yeah. It definitely fits into the summary. Like that's blanket applicable to all tunnelers. It's configuring the operating system with a way to look up private DNS names, and it's providing those IP routes, which is just a map basically. Like you give me an IP, I give you like a next hop, a way to get there. That's what an IP route is, and that's what I meant by layer 3 as well, is just the IP routes. So routers provide routes, and routers are also called gateways or next hop in a multi-hop path that a packet might follow to get from point A to point B. And so Ziti is not normally a router per se, but at least in that strict sense of the word, but it is configuring the operating system with a route to itself, and then it's translating that packet onto our software-defined overlay, where it is no longer at layer 3. It's really an application at that point.
Now, Linux does not use search domains, is that correct?
It does use
Oh, it
search
does?
domains. Yep. As far as Linux,
I mean,
there's
the
an
ZD
equivalent
Edge
to
tunnel on
NRPT.
Linux.
Yeah. The analog to NRPT on Linux is normally systemd resolve D or resolved with a D at the end. It's a daemon, as in a background service that is providing. It's doing all the spinning plates with respect to name resolution or DNS in the Linux operating system. Most major OSs are using it, with the notable exception that it's turned off by default in RHEL 8. Please correct me out there, Internet, if you know better than
So
that. But
so if I understood, systemd resolved or resolved also
yeah,
performs a similar function of search domains and allowing the system to send specific matching domain requests to a name
okay. So
server.
in Linux, here's a quick primer on Linux DNS. So the glibc or libc, most things use libc. That's the C library, right, to do system calls. And so there is a file that is almost like, basically, if you're running libc from upstream, then that is, you haven't modified it, then it's using this file called etc resolve conf. It's a very familiar file name if you've worked with Linux at all, because that's where you configure your name servers. And of course, a name server configuration, the purpose of that is to delegate to some IP address the role of looking up names on your behalf for the operating system. So there's an etc resolve conf, and you can see the directive is name server, and the value is an IP address. It's always an IP address because you have to have a name server to look up names. So you have to have an IP. And when this is on a device that's where the name servers are being managed by a tunneler, an Opencd tunneler, then you'll see an IP address that matches the configured range, or the default range of IP addresses for Opencd. To put another way, every Opencd tunneler provides a subnet or IP range for its own purposes. And we use a reserved range that doesn't normally collide with anything else, according to an RFC. And that just happens to be 100.64.0.0/10. So that libc is your entry point, you could say, for DNS on Linux, that etc resolve conf file that's managed by libc. Now, so any
But
application, any non-ZD app running on that box, on that Linux box, can naively look up names as soon as etc resolve conf is configured to have some ZD. What's
so
your
when I install ZD Edge tunnel on Linux, does my resolve.conf change? Is that what you're saying?
as a last resort? Where systemd resolve D comes in is that when it's running, the way it's basically activated is that that file stops being a regular file and starts being a link to a systemd resolved file. And what that means is that the real file that's managed by resolved is going to have a special value in it. Instead of it saying name server and then some global DNS, it's going to be name server and a little private IP for the loopback address that points to itself on running on the same box. And so now it's got a real name server running there on the same computer, which can do anything it wants with incoming
So,
queries.
so how is it that the ZD Edge tunnel is capable of instructing
Yeah,
resolved to
that's the next
intercept?
step.
Yeah.
Right. So the normal state for out of the box for major Linux distributions is that this file is actually a link to a file managed by resolved, and then that file is simply pointing to itself. Now, inside of resolved, the whenever you fire up the Linux tunnel, what it does is calls the API running on the same computer and says, hey, I'm here. I have a new device that is a networking device. It's got its own subnet and everything. And these are the search domains that I want to use with that device. And so any query, any name query that comes in the front door for resolved that matches this pattern, I want to resolve it myself with this name server.
And can I see these settings somehow in Linux? Like I just went
Oh
to
yeah,
my
totally.
Linux machine that's running in Amazon.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so just say resolve CTL, all one word, and then space domain. And you've got ZT Edge Tunnel already running here. There you go. So you can see there's a ton device here, and there's no search domain currently configured on this particular box.
Oh, because I don't have any intercepts.
Well, actually, that depending on the version of Linux that you're running, that might be equivalent to the wildcard or all search domains. So
Gotcha.
the link 90 might mean that it's highest precedence or something. But let's run another command: resolve CTL space DNS. Now you'll see the name server that's been configured for that device, and 100.64.0.0/10 is the range, and so the predictable IP of the name server is .2.
Which is one higher than the
one
IP
higher
assigned.
than, right,
Sure.
Exactly. And if you were to say IP address show and then ton 0, or you can see it right there, 90 is the link number. See how its address is .1, and that is the first address above the network address or base address of the range. The base address is 0. Yep, and the name server is always 1+.
Cool. Well, I mean, I think that kind of covers it pretty well. I did not expect it to take that long. But that's cool.
Yeah, we did burn a lot of minutes on.
We did, and I want to get to Todd here because we asked Todd to come in.
Sorry, Todd.
Todd wanted to dip anyway, so like he's just been sitting here like I'm just waiting, guys, just waiting. I didn't want to turn him off because he looked so engaged. But Todd, you have been working on getting Prometheus metrics into ZD components. Is that what you've been working on?
Yeah, I've been working on making ZD scrapable by Prometheus so that we can pull metrics into a Prometheus system.
And why is that interesting?
There's a couple. ZD supports a couple of different metrics options currently today in the release version. You can write up metrics to a file in a JSON format or a plain text format, or you can have ZD push into an influx DB, influx database for Grafana or some whatever other front end you want to use for that. We've gotten some requests to be able to support Prometheus also. Prometheus is sort of an industry, becoming more of an industry standard, being able to reach out and touch your systems to ingest metrics from it.
It is a bit of a darling. I without self-aggrandizing too much, in one of the presentations I give, I talk about why, which is it's a CNCF project, a cloud native computing foundation project, and it's one which has graduated from incubation all the way to graduated, which there are not a tremendous number of those. So it does have a lot of love, and there's some good reasons for it too. Like free. You can't beat free.
Free's good.
Yeah. Free is good. Also, you get the automatic by scraping, by reaching out and grabbing those metrics, you can control your aggregation points too. So if you, because when you start grabbing metrics from everything everywhere, you find very quickly that that's a lot of data. And so being able to bucketize the data in smaller chunks, I think, is one of the big reasons people like Prometheus. And also you get to segregate the Prometheus instance in a way that makes sense. Like if you had the Go developers, you could give the Go developers their Prometheus instance wherever it is, and you can give the Java developers Prometheus instances. Well, that's cool. So where are you adding it in Opencd?
So right now we're adding an endpoint to the controller. You can hit an endpoint there, and it will pull down metrics for the controller as well as all of the edge routers. So ZD has an inspect capability that can be invoked either through the command line or through the REST API. And there are a few options to go out and gather real-time data from the whole system. including the controller and everything that's connected to it, or all the fabric that's connected through it. So the first step was to add in the ability to pull metrics through that inspect framework. So when this goes live, you'll be able to, from the command line, just run a ZD inspect with a regular expression to be able to pull back metrics from everything or from one router. If you suspect there's a problem with one router, you can just pull metrics from one router, kind of on demand.
That's cool.
And then the Prometheus scrape ties into that to pull metrics from everywhere.
That's cool. So we could almost have a per Prometheus, like in the Opencd quick starts in the Docker Compose world, we could maybe deploy Prometheus in there and provide some charts and graphs of some of the stuff.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be cool. That'd be a neat thing to add on to the Compose quick start, or whatever you want to call it.
Todd, I want this real bad for my self-hosted home lab.
Oh yeah, Ken's been doing some interesting work with Opencd here. Yeah.
And our own DevOps folks at NetFoundry are really interested in getting Prometheus into our NetOps or our operations kind of environment. Today we push up with like we scrape the files or push up through Influx. I'm not sure exactly which one in our hosted systems, but there's some interest in getting Prometheus in there as well.
That's really neat. Any interesting or crazy things that have come from it? Any learning or hard problems that were easy or hard problems that are still hard?
Oh, there's also hard problems that are interesting. So learning a lot about kind of what Prometheus' scrape capabilities are. Right. Mm-hmm. So right now there's limited support for headers. There's some support for authentication. So coming to the right level of being able to scrape your metrics over HTTPS with a level of protection so they're not just plain open to the world.
Right.
So
now,
we have. Yep.
Oh, I was going to say, in the controller where these metrics are going, can I only provide the metrics to like local host so that they're only available from local host? Is that something I could do?
You can. So the way the binding works, it works like the other web bindings in ZD in the controller, where you can specify one or more interfaces to listen on and the port on that interface. So you can expose it only to local host. That does require that there's something running on local host that can access them.
Sure. Yeah, you need like a edge router or a tunneler or something there, right? Yep. Or you need to be on the local machine. Like you could put Prometheus right there, right?
Yep.
If you wanted
to put Prometheus there, you could also expose it over a different network interface that's not publicly accessible. Is an option. Something I'm looking to play with sometime in the next week is using an edge router and the Zdified version of Prometheus that we've built or have available to scrape the metrics directly over the ZD network. So either the same ZD network or a different ZD network. It could be either or.
So an important question there. Would that? So I wouldn't be listening on the underlay. I wouldn't be listening on 127.0.0.1 anymore. I'd be listening on the overlay.
You would still be listening on the underlay for now.
Okay.
If this proves to have
my
enough,
my excitement was so high.
I could see it. I could see the cloud of joy over your head. It just came crashing down on your shoulders. Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
But that is definitely a possibility for the future. There's nothing in here that is precluding that. We just haven't gotten to that point yet.
I see. Ken, I have an option or an idea. We need to get some Ziggy reactions into Restream here so that we can pop up a Ziggy celebrates and then a Ziggy sad, because that's what I would have done right there.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And then, yeah, you touched on a little bit. I think you just kind of like blew right past it. But the adding security around Prometheus, you said, was kind of challenging. Is that what you...
It's not. It's that how it works with ZD was a little bit challenging. There are some built-in security schemes in Prometheus. Like there's some OAuth kind of things, and they don't
Okay.
necessarily play in with the management endpoints that we have in ZD right now. So ZD is because it's an administrative interface, it's a little more kind of pre-configured. It's at this point. So I needed to find a way that we could provide a certificate and then validate that certificate as username and password. One isn't supported, and two, then that becomes an administrative username that we put into ZD.
Would it make sense here to kill two birds with one stone? Because like what I heard you say, and now my brain's kind of just racing. Like we would probably install ZD Edge Tunnel or a router. Would it make sense instead to actually build a exporter for Prometheus, one that we could put on the Prometheus list that says, hey, if you're on the OpenZD overlay network, you just run this agent, and that, I mean, it basically would be your tunneler, right? But it would be purpose built to scrape just ZD. Like Prometheus has a whole bunch of scraper target, I don't know what they call them, exporters that you run co-located with your database or your web server or whatever. I think it would make a lot of sense to make a purpose-built one whose job in life is just to access ZD. And then that might make it easier for you, because then you would configure Prometheus to scrape the exporter, not to scrape ZD, even though ZD would provide both.
Potentially.
Yeah, he hates that idea, Ken. Did you see that?
I
That
do.
was
It's
totally
terrible.
just right up.
Yeah.
Brush it right aside. Said,
Sure
stop,
thing, Clint. I will consider that as my
stop
top
making it work
priority.
for me. That's what I heard. Stop making it work.
Wouldn't that be
On
great?
the flip side, though,
I
the
will file
tunneler.
that. I will put an issue in for that.
There you go.
I'll put it in the circular file. Okay.
I'm just swimming.
It's awesome.
On the flip side, as a counter argument to that, the scraping of the Prometheus metrics is a web request. So it's not a complicated thing. It's a post request or a get request, and that returns to you a stream of text data. So we may not need something special so much as a template for a service that can be installed into ZD.
Given the, like, I'm a natural shill for things, right? I'm not a salesman, but I have natural salesman vibes. And so I'm thinking that a purpose-built application would be pretty cool, because then I can just download your purpose-built app, and then it would be purpose-built, meaning it wouldn't be a generic thing. It would be prescriptive, not flexible. Flexible equals documentation. Flexible equals options. Prescriptive means you just run this thing and you set the bit, you do the thing, and it works, right? Like there's a lot. I have a lot of love for easy. So if it's just as easy to run ZD Edge Tunnel, which I would imagine it is, but configuring it is the question. Is it just as easy to configure it then?
Yeah,
So,
we have to get there yet.
yeah, that's cool. No, I mean, I like, that's what ZD TV is all about, right? Like, let's talk about interesting things that are coming down the road that aren't actually released yet. Let's whet the appetite, as they might say. People like Philip will be excited because he's always trying to find things to whet the appetite. So yeah, well, thanks for coming on and sharing that. That's, I think, pretty neat. We're right at the hour, so I think we fit this in pretty well. I think we've made a great ZD TV here. I know Jeff would approve. And yeah, I think that's everything, right? Anything else we want to say before we go?
Thanks for joining us. Look for us
Yeah,
on Discord. And like maintainers and enthusiasts ready to jump in.
Cool. All right, we'll see you next time then.